Welcome to Wednesday Wellness, where we learn to be well, get well, and stay well. As we join Dr. Brett Brimhall sharing about the stress and the brain for a healthy, happy holiday.
For those of you guys that this is your first Wellness Wednesday, this is something we started a while back, and we're a group of like-minded people. We met through a company called LifeVantage. It's a company that's focused on nutrigenomics, which is really how in which not only your food but your world affects your genes and really your potential. And we have a common bond here, which is we want to help people get well, stay well, and be well. And that's our focus, and that's why we have these. And tonight, really for this month, we're really focusing a lot on just being healthy through the holidays. And I really wasn't planning on talking about brain a whole lot this month, but I just went to a seminar over the weekend, spent time focused on, it was all about brain, all about dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, which is called Lou Gehrig's, OCD, concussions, autism, attention deficit, hyperactivity, right? All these different things about brain and brain health. And it fits right in with the holidays because sometimes the holidays just stress us out, right? And I'm going to kind of hit some highlights for you. I'm going to pull a slide up so you can kind of see this. But I want to start this with a phrase, and raise your hand if you've ever heard this. If it's too good to be true, it probably what is? Okay, we've heard that before. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay, so what have you been told about this? Totally safe, right? Or what have you been told about this? Totally safe, right? Or what have you been told about this? Doesn't work, right? Okay. So all I'm saying is that if what you're doing is getting you where you want to go, awesome. If it doesn't make sense to you, I would consider doing your homework and research, okay? Because here's what's critical, that if we don't do something different with the way we're going as an American people, and I'm going to say just people in general, as far as taking personal health and accountability on our health, we're going to be in serious trouble. All right. So I'm going to kind of take some stuff from this book by Dr. Bredesen, End of Alzheimer's. One of the places I ask people to go to is called pubmed.gov, PUBMED.gov. And that's a place what's called peer-reviewed studies. You can go there and look it up. It's really legit science. You can see what's there. And because if Alzheimer's or dementia or a concussion or some type of brain problem hasn't affected you personally, it has affected you personally through a loved one, right? Whether that was someone was diagnosed with autism or dementia or whatever it might be. My own grandfather, I still remember to this day, him going through dementia and watching him forget who I was. And I was pretty young at that time. He died when I was 16. But a lot of my younger youth, I remember him. We were out rounding up cattle together, right? He was 80 something. He was 93 when he passed. So I was little, but I was on a horse chasing cows. And he was sharp at the tack, fun as could be. And then all of a sudden, he started going downhill mentally. All right. And so I'm going to pull a slide up before I finish that story. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Because even though I'm going to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's and dementia and things of that nature, hold on, I got to change something really quick. It's going to relate to anything if anybody has a brain. All right. So if you have a brain, this is going to affect you. Okay. All right. So let me go back to my Zoom real quick and share this screen. So if you have a brain or you have somebody you love that has a brain, this list of things I'm going to show you is going to affect you. And what you haven't heard about it is already affecting you. All right. So this is Dr. Bredesen's protocol for working with people with dementia. All right. So think of dementia as the far end, right, of what you don't want in your brain. All right. And so somewhere between where you are and dementia, okay, are these things that you can do. All right. So none of us want to be told to change your diet. None of us want to be told exercise. None of us want to be told to sleep more, things like that. All right. So going back to my grandfather, he started going downhill when he went through some major stress in his life. So cowboy, born in 1899, he was a rancher. So what made him go downhill was some family members of him stole his cattle. Like it was part of the biggest cattle rustling ring in Arizona since like the Old West. From that point on, he started going down mentally. Right. So whether it's a chemical stress, I call it chemical concussion now, an emotional stress, insomnia, not sleeping enough stress, all that, what that does is causes brain breakdown. So if you're having symptoms already that would involve brain, and so what does your brain do? Your brain does everything. So if you're having some form of brain fatigue, you might feel it in the form of, I can't make a decision, or I want to withdraw from the world. Or they might be a decision, I can't remember where my keys are. Or it might be like, I don't know where I live, right? So there's all sorts of things with the brain fatigue. So there's things you can control. When we look at his protocol, I want you to look at this. First one, optimized diet, which it says to minimize carbohydrates. So that's a sugar, for those of you that know what a carbohydrate, to minimize that, right? So it says, low glycemic, low inflammatory, low grains. So carbohydrates lead to brain inflammation that makes brain breakdown. So no matter if it's somebody that's dealing with like maybe symptoms of overwhelm, or somebody that's already seeing signs of, more like forgetting things, this is a place to start. Why is that? Because your brain is made up of fats, right? So if you're not taking a super good essential fatty acid, you should be, right? If you just want to protect your brain, okay? All right, enhanced autophagy, which is called, or ketogenesis. So autophagy is the cleanup process. So imagine your house, right, that nobody ever took out the trash. Like nobody did took out the trash. It just didn't happen. Well, it would just kind of pile up inside your house, and how nice of a place would that be to live? So this process of autophagy is something that happens inside our cells. It's just constantly cleaning up, and there's certain moms, right, that tell the person to take the trash out. Okay, these molecules are known as sirtuins. They're part of that process. And one of the ways you can influence sirtuins, or the moms of the cell, to say take the trash out, all right, are certain nutrients, and also what's called fasting, right? So not eating as much or as often, okay? That causes what's called ketogenesis. Reduce your stress, all right? So every single one of you, we can reduce our stress, and that will affect your brain long-term. So here's a couple ideas: yoga, meditation, music. Music is not one for me, right? Nor would it be if I was playing the piano for you. It would not be relaxing, okay? But hiking for me is. Doing a technology what's called brain tap, it's in my form of meditation, is for me. So that's one of the things that I do, okay, to reduce my stress. Optimizing sleep, okay? Look at what it says here. 8 hours of sleep per night, and there's some nutrition that they talk about you using. So how many of us, raise your hand if you want, get consistently 8 hours of sleep a night? Right? Not very many people, a few people where they sleep solid tonight. If we're not, our brain is literally breaking down. Right? So these are under our control. If you're not sure how to get there, we may have to do some stuff to work on. Now, can all these things factor in together? Yeah, if you're stressed out, you're not going to sleep as well. So working on your stress is going to affect your sleep. I'm going to just highlight a couple of things. These are lab values, what's called homocysteine, serum B12, C-reactive protein, fasting insulin, hormone balance, right? All of these are nutrients. And the only thing I want to talk on this is when you go to the doctor before and they say, hey, your labs are normal, okay, that means you're normal for average. Okay, what I mean by that, so do you want to be normal as the average normal person is, or do you want to be optimal? So when it comes to my brain health, I want to be optimal. All right, so if that's the case, then you want your values to be in the optimal range, right? Not in the normal range. The normal diet, we call it this standard American diet, gives you normal average human conditions. I'm not sure you want those. All right. So just pay that attention. So these are just specific markers relate. So homocysteine and B12, those are both influenced by taking the right type of B vitamins, right? Very critical for brain health. C-reactive protein is a value for inflammation, right? So to control inflammation is critical for brain health. Fasting insulin, that's a number that relates to how diabetic you are or not. So all that I'm telling you, so going back to the start, well, having a diet that reduces carbohydrates, you have a better insulin level. So here's kind of the fun part with you. The normal range of insulin fasting can be up to like 40, right? Depending on the labs you read. So, but if you're having a hard time losing weight, the reason is a lot of times your insulin's high. So you got to do stuff to pull that back down. So if I'm monitoring people long term, I look at fasting insulin and I look at what's called hemoglobin A1C because it tells me really if they're behaving or not. Okay. So gut health, I want to hit this one a little bit because this is so cool. One of the things they hammered again and again this weekend, have you ever heard, anybody heard of leaky gut? Like we hear that all the time, all right? So leaky gut is like you leave the doors open to your house all the time and windows. So stuff just gets in that's not supposed to get in, right? So imagine living in like a not so safe neighborhood, right? And your doors are unlocked, wide open, come in. Right? Could that create damage in your house? Absolutely. All right. So you want to make sure you keep the doors and windows closed. That's having a healthy gut. But if you have a leaky gut, you have a leaky brain. And here's the flip side of that. If you have a concussion or a head injury, you start developing leaky gut immediately thereafter because there's a direct connection between brain and gut. So protecting brain is just as important as protecting gut. All right. So, and even if you have a perfect gut and brain, you don't want to create a neighborhood that is toxic. And that's what you put in your body. So we don't want toxic neighbors, right? So whatever you put in your body, that's the neighborhood you're creating, right? So do you want to put toxic neighbors? I hope not. Okay. So some of the things here, there are different nutrients you can do to affect all this, but I want to hit a couple of things here. So you'll look at different nutrients. There's like antioxidants, that's vitamin A, C, selenium, and zinc, things of that nature. Thyroid health is critical, which is called hormonal balance. And all the things you can do, like control your sleep, not overeating, but eating consistently, decreasing your stress. Guess what? All of that helps to normalize hormone levels. All that helps to improve insulin sensitivity. So controlling those habits like consistency of sleep, finding some stress management tools and techniques that you use, and taking the right nutrients and removing the stuff that's not good for you is going to normalize a lot of these big words that you're seeing. All right. This nocturnal oxygen, that had to do with sleeping good at night. So people that have sleep apnea, they'll have more problems brain-based wise. So if you think that's going on, you want to work on improving that. So I want you to look at this focus, improving focus, right? So doing techniques, right, or skill sets. So here's a little clue. If you want to keep your brain happy and healthy, learn new skills. All right. So I don't play the piano, right? I did a little bit when I was younger, but if I really wanted to protect my brain, I would learn how to play an instrument. That would be something that would be really good for me. So instead, this year for me on my brain, because my kids gave me they gave me New Year's resolutions for me, right? So my New Year's resolution from one of my kids this year was to work on my handwriting. And I'm sure some of you would appreciate that, okay? Because that's a skill set. Handwriting and how in which your handwriting looks, right, is a skill set that takes practice, that takes control between your brain and your hand. So for me, really, I'm actually going to focus on that this year, as weird as that sounds, right? Because that will help my brain have better control, which will it'll force me to develop new brain pathways. So if you want to help your brain be happier or healthier or have it maybe younger, right? Make it do something that you did when you were younger, which is learn a new skill, right? So maybe that's something you're not good at and you want to get better at. Maybe that's learning an instrument. Maybe that's picking up an old skill. Maybe that's learning to put things together that you never did before. It's something that would challenge your brain. That is super critical, because if someone says, I can't do that, that's something, it's BS, right? It means I don't know how to do it yet. And I may not be great at it, but if you learn to do something that you haven't done before, that's creating new brain pathways, what that's doing is creating new brain chemistry. What that means is just keeping your brain younger. All right. So, and then a couple of things here, the sirtuin activity I talked about before. I missed it somewhere here, where'd it go? But it talked about improving mitochondrial function. Because if you keep your mitochondria happy, which are neuroproducers, you keep your sirtuins happy, your brain's happier. And if you control the oxidative stress in your brain's happier. Increase fish oils. So for those of us that are part of Life Advantage, there's specific things that's been our focus. And so I was listening to this conversation at the seminar. Somebody asked me, what was your takeaway? One of my biggest takeaways was I'm doing the right thing, right? So people think, well, what can I do? Guys, if you're working on your sleep, working on your stress levels, learning new skill sets all the time, if you're taking essential fatty acids, vitamin D, and controlling your oxidative stress and improving your mitochondrial function and improving your sirtuin activity, you are doing the right thing, right? And that to me made me really happy knowing that this is a big deal and we need to focus on doing that more. And then basically get rid of heavy metals. But here's one of the takeaways I want you to have. They asked this question because we're talking about concussion specifically, and then we'll end this. And I got more stuff next week. I could go on for a long time, but I don't want to bore anybody. But here's the cool thing, and I want this really to sink in. When is the best time to treat a concussion? So a concussion is a head injury. So when is the best time to treat a concussion? Because once people, so if you hit your head, you're going to have head symptoms, right? How long you have those head symptoms had to do with what they call post-concussive syndrome if it's been there for a few months. That's got post-concussive syndrome, where you still have symptoms even though your head injury was months or sometimes years ago. So here's the key. The best time to treat a concussion is before you have one. So the best time to treat a concussion is before you have one. Because if the person was doing all of these things before they had a concussion, their improvement will be vastly different. So even if somebody you don't know, right, or somebody you do know that hadn't had an injury yet, and they want to prepare better now, these are the same things to do, whether you don't already have symptoms or they don't. And what I love about Dr. Bresner's protocol is he has a study that's on PubMed, it's pretty cool, talking about how he worked with people with severe dementias. And one of the signs was that they were no longer working because they couldn't. And some of those people were able to go back to functioning at work, right? And that's giant because most people, they think that's not a possibility, right? But the best time to work on your brain is when you don't have a problem, right? So I'm off my soapbox. Thanks for hopping on. Next Wednesday, we're going to do this again. Talk a little bit, probably a little more, kind of maybe highlight a few of these specific things as it relates to more of what you can do, and just invite more people to it. Hopefully it's helpful. And so we're going to stop the recording.
Thanks for watching. And remember, one change can have an enormous effect. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell and the like, and we'll see you next time on Love to Live.